Shabbat Shalom. So I'm going to give kind of a Cliff Notes version of my drash. So if you want the longer version, what can I tell you? It doesn't exist. So Shabbat Shalom, what a spectacular evening to be here. Just so moving. And I'm so thrilled to see you, to have Melissa Simon here, Rabbi now who has been in the college campus universe for this year. So we're sending you so much love and support. Oi Gewalt is all I could say. To have you, Georgette Kennebrae here, it's just incredible to me. Two people I've learned so much from. And I'm also so thrilled to have Rabbi Noah Satat, who is the head of the most important human rights organization in Israel. That's the largest and oldest human rights organization in Israel, called the Association for Civil Rights in Israel, which is in the middle of this war, doing incredible work to try and protect the rights of people. It's precisely at moments of war where rights are, we all know, eroded sometimes the most. And ACRI, the Association for Civil Rights in Israel, has been doing amazing, amazing, amazing work in Israel. And so we're so thrilled. I'm so touched that you've left your family, your work, to be here in New York, to be here part of the celebration this weekend. So incredible to have you here. So, okay, here's I'm going to talk fast. You know, they always say that on panel discussions where the rabbi, the minister, and the priest are, and the moderator says, you only have a couple of minutes. We told you had 15. The priest and the minister always cut their talks down, and the rabbi just talks fast. Don't laugh so much. That's too much laughter over there. There's too much recognition. So this parsha is the end of the book of Leviticus, and it's full of blessings and curses. As anybody who's listened to me speak over these last 32 years, you know I think a lot about blessings and curses. How do we live with both of them? How do we amplify blessings? How do we try to control the scale of the curses, the impact of the curses, knowing that they exist? But in this parsha, there are 3-to-1 curses to blessings, which I would say probably falls out pretty similar to what most of our experiences are in life. Maybe even that's a low number, that the amount of curses we experience are much more than the amount of blessings. And this parsha really reflects that. It's a 3-to-1 ratio. And I know, since I know some of you very well, your experience of your lives, I'd say is more like 15-to-1, or maybe 30-to-1, or maybe 100-to-1. But for sure, this is the human experience, that it's much more easily accessible to feel and experience the curses than it is to feel and experience the blessings. It seems to be in our nature, and it seems to be part of what God has given to us as challenge as human beings, how to reduce the impact of the curses and amplify the impact of the blessings. And in Jewish, I would say it's a mitzvah is what we do to increase the blessings and the light in the world. And an aveira, a transgression, is that which increases the curses and diminishes the light in the world. So if you imagine that's the formula, I want to talk about a few things tonight as examples of ways that human beings in the current world do that. The first thing I want to say is to refer to something that Rabbi Kennebrae said so eloquently. When we celebrate immigration in this country, of course, there is one people in this country who didn't come here looking for a better life, but were brought here in shackles and enslaved people from Africa. It's the only group that came to this country against their will and not looking for a better life, but reduced from a life of independence and liberation to a life of being enslaved people. So when we talk about coming to this country, and when we talk about it as Jews, we have to remember not all Jews have come to this country looking for a better life, but those Jews of color among us who are sharing their life as African Americans and as Jews understand that the immigration experience for African Americans is unlike the experience for anybody else, because it was not voluntary and it wasn't seeking out a better life. People were enslaved Africans brought to this country to form the economic foundation of this country. And that's part of our legacy as a country, and we want to keep improving and going into a better place. But it doesn't happen without teaching honest history. And honest history starts with the range of who we are. And so that we can be a community that talks about all of these things, the blessings and the curses of being immigrants, but also recognizing what African Americans have lived through in their experience of becoming Americans in the 400 years of slavery, and we as a Jewish people who are also Jews of color relate to that experience so deeply. So I'm very grateful, Rabbi Kennebrae, for you making sure you highlighted that in reading the prayer for the country. But again, there are more curses than blessings. So I want to give two examples of this, of how do we choose to respond to curses. And what I want to urge you to do is to think about this, how we all respond to the curses. There are curses inside of our own personal lives, and then there are the, how shall we say, you might have noticed, a few curses on our communal, national, international world, right? A few. So I'm going to give an example of the people who have inspired me, which helped me think about the clinic as a response to the curse of the hatred of immigrants that this country's right wing has embraced with such vigor and foundational theology. It's a foundational theology to the right wing in this country that immigrants are the problems to everything, right? That's a foundational theology. So how do we respond to it? So first, I want to talk briefly about something that's happening in Israel, which I have mentioned in previous times. And these folks are the inspiration to me and the clinic, and let me explain why. So there are two responses when we see ugliness in the world, right? There's one response, which is to scream and yell about that ugliness and try and protest it. Very important to do. But then there are those people who choose to figure out how to increase the light, not just curse the darkness. So would you play the video for a second, Jason? We're going to play a short video.
We're here at Tarkumia checkpoint. Every day, dozens of trucks carrying food and other supplies cross here from the occupied Palestinian West Bank and head through Israel towards the Gaza Strip. But extremist settlers made themselves a habit of attacking these trucks, destroying the food to aggravate the humanitarian catastrophe unfolding in the Gaza Strip. This is why we formed the Humanitarian Guard. Every day, dozens of peace activists from Israel come here, both Jewish citizens as well as Palestinian citizens, to force the police to do their job, to block between the violent settlers and the trucks, to allow the humanitarian aid to reach Gaza. During our time here, hundreds of trucks already passed. 900 Israeli citizens volunteered to participate in this humanitarian guard, and more than 200 have been physically on the ground here every day for the past 10 days. This comes to show that when we organize, we can outnumber the extremist settlers and we can allow the humanitarian aid to reach the Palestinians.
So this group standing together, we had them speak at CBST, and he's one of the young organizers of Standing Together. So what was happening? These trucks full of humanitarian aid, flour, rice, and other foods, were being attacked by Jewish settlers. These are Jewish supremacists. They're like white supremacists here in this country, Jewish supremacists. They were taking Palestinian drivers of the trucks out of the trucks and beating them almost to death. 2 are still in the hospital right now in very, very intensive care, very serious condition. They took the drivers out and beat them and almost beat them to death. And then they took all of the flour off the trucks and created bonfires to burn all of the flour and rice that was heading to help Gazan citizens survive a famine, which is beginning to happen there. So there are a couple of responses, right? Is to scream and yell about how terrible it is. 900 Israeli volunteers, Palestinians and Jews, as you heard, showing up every single day to create what they're calling a humanitarian guard, to make sure the trucks are not attacked, the Palestinian drivers are not killed or maimed, and the flour gets through to Gaza. 200 a day, organized by the Israeli WhatsApp group, which is everything in Israel is organized by WhatsApp. It is bizarre, but everything is a WhatsApp group in Israel. And 200 a day come to the different intersections and do two things. One, they stand there to literally be witnesses, and then when the Jewish supremacists, these are racist extremists who want to see all of those Gazan citizens leave Gaza, and they believe if there is such a famine, it will force them all to leave. They are prevented from attacking the trucks because the police have to come. The police were watching. The police and the army were watching the settlers attack the trucks and not do anything about it. So we could geschrei a lot about that, but what Standing Together has done is to send volunteers to stand there. And guess what? Bullies don't like it so much when people stand up and say, we will non-violently prevent you from getting to the trucks, from burning any of the flour, from beating any of the drivers, and it has forced the police to actually do their job. The Association for Civil Rights in Israel, the largest human rights organization in Israel, which Noah heads as the executive director, has brought lawsuit after lawsuit into the Israeli court system to force the police to do their job, which is to protect humanitarian aid so it can get into Gaza. Because of these 900 volunteers, as you heard mentioned, hundreds of trucks are getting in. So you want to do something about the horror that's going on? Donate some money to Standing Together. They have a special fund just for this humanitarian guard. Help the Association for Civil Rights make sure that the lawsuits can go on to make sure that civil society responds as it should. So that's an example of what in Israel has now become known as Tag Me'ir, to create light rather than create darkness. But Tag Me'ir, which is what it's based on, is a price tag. So the idea is, how do you create light when you see evil? How do you create light? So these groups of volunteer, when a Palestinian has been targeted, they show up to the home of the mourners. When a Jew has been targeted, they show up to the home of the mourners. They believe in showing up to make sure that Jews and Palestinians go together to make sure there is a visible presence of people who reject the narrative of hate and reject the typical story of who the other is. So that's one example, right, of how do you respond to hate? You could actually do something. It's an amazing concept. So when we were experiencing the violent language of the former president about immigrants, and because of the Muslim bans of announcements, do you remember what happened that Saturday night? Thousands of us went to JFK. Thousands of us. I'm not sure which, if we have that pictures. Jason, could you show some pictures? This is at JFK. Thousands of us were there to make sure that immigrants coming in would not get targeted. The idea was that we were afraid that immigrants were going to get targeted as they actually arrived. Thousands of us were there. Let's show a few much more of those photos. Let's keep going. This is all from JFK. And the power of just having so many people there saying, we are not part of this. And in fact, we're going to create, like a humanitarian guard, we're going to create guards of Jews, of people saying, our values mean we will protect the vulnerable. Keep going, Jason. Let's just, we don't have time to look it through. There isn't one from DC? I have 4. Okay, you don't have the other ones. All right, thank you, Jason. Sorry. Everybody, can we give Jason a round of applause? Jason. He's actually very shy, but Jason, stand up so everybody can see you. He likes having the camera. So the place that I got the idea that we could actually do something is from Israel, where I saw people doing things by showing up and by not just saying we can't do anything, but by finding ways to do something. So that was the idea of creating the clinic. Before we had the clinic, accompanying people when they had hearings. Immigration clinics, immigration courts in the United States is and let me see if I get this right, Noemi. It's the only court that doesn't require a lawyer, right? So, doesn't provide a lawyer because it doesn't require it. You can represent yourself. So it doesn't provide free legal assistance. So can you imagine immigrant comes here, doesn't necessarily speak the language, doesn't have the access to all of the intensely complicated paperwork, and they have to represent themselves in court.
And there's no sign at the airport that says you have 1 year to do it.
Right, there's no information given. No information. So part of what our clinic does is to help prepare people to be able to represent themselves if there aren't enough lawyers to do it, and to make sure they're getting all the legal resources to go through the process. So 5 years later, 40 human beings, some of them sitting right here, have asylum status in the United States, protecting them here in the United States. Because of us stepping forward and not just saying the President of the United States is a racist, he's a horror, which all of that was true, but by coming together and saying, okay, how can we spread a little bit of that light? These are the countries that ARC friends, and we use the word friend to mean every immigrant who comes through our door, not clients, but friends, because that's how we see them as part of our community. Here are the countries that our ARC friends have come from: Jamaica, Colombia, Venezuela, Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, El Salvador, Nicaragua, Cuba, Trinidad, Bahamas, Grenada, Ecuador, Peru, Brazil, Guyana, Dominican Republic, Haiti, Panama, Bahamas, Barbados, Morocco, Algeria, Libya, Egypt, Chad, Ghana, Sierra Leone, Russia, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, and China. In 5 years. So when you hear something depressing that's happening in the world, your question is, how do I increase the light? That's what your question has to be. It doesn't have to be massive or big, right? It can be saying, okay, I'm going to volunteer at the clinic for 3 months at a time. Or I'm going to donate $50 to the clinic. There is no excuse to do nothing, but it doesn't mean everything is on you, right? This is what we believe as Jews. It is not incumbent upon you to solve the whole problem, but that doesn't free you from the obligation to do something. Everyone can do something. No one has to do everything. And that's the power of understanding what it is to start with a small flame. And each of us can be that small flame. And with that flame, my flame attached to yours, 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 creates the light by which we're going to find our way out of the hell that this world is in. So let's all light our lights. Shabbat Shalom.